Hi everybody, Natasha here with the Van City Home Team. Okay, so we're going to talk about what is the 5-year rule. So a lot of people would like to know what the 5-year rule is. And the 5-year rule is basically the upgrade cycle of buying a home. So first-time buyers, generally they get into the market and they buy a 1-bedroom condo because that's what they can afford and they're single at the time. So as their life changes and they get into a relationship, they think that maybe it's a good idea to upgrade. Now, this used to take a little bit longer than it does now, but now we're in a bit of a disposable society and we tend to get bored quicker. So we want to move through those changes even faster. The itch kind of comes around the 3-year mark. So the 3-year mark, a lot of people are coming in and they think, well, I'm outgrowing this condo, so maybe we'll get into a townhouse. So everyone assumes that buying is the right thing to do versus renting, and it's actually not always the case. I'm going to go through a little formula at the end of this to kind of show you what to do if you are actually a first-time buyer to determine whether it's the right move or not. Basically, I'm going to tell you how you can lose money, which you don't want to do when you get this 3-year itch. So the 5-year rule really means that whenever you buy something, you should intend to stay there for at least 5 years, and I'm going to tell you why. So around the 3-year mark, people start to get this itch. They want to upgrade to a bigger unit or a townhome from a condo because their family's growing. So here's where you lose money. So number one, closing costs. So closing costs are legal fees, disbursements. Basically, you would do an adjustment and a lawyer or a notary would handle the discharge from your name on your title and the transfer of the property. So that comes at a cost. So those discharge costs can be up to a few $1,000s. Mortgage costs. When people take out a mortgage, I don't know if you've noticed, but 3-year mortgage, 5-year mortgage, 10-year mortgage, as you get larger terms or longer terms, you tend to get better rates. I mean, that is with everything, even interest rates when you're saving at the bank. Generally, the longer you leave your money there, the more interest you're going to get. Same kind of thing with a mortgage. The first few years of a mortgage is predominantly interest anyway. So if you have a 5-year mortgage and you took that because of the great rate, imagine that you haven't paid anything after 3 years of having that mortgage. So you get the 3-year itch and you think, okay, great. So maybe when you signed your mortgage documents, you didn't look at the small print that said that if you break your mortgage before the 5-year term, so you're at the 3-year mark now, you want to sell your property, you would probably have to pay a 3-month interest penalty. So the interest penalty is interesting because usually the first year of a mortgage has the highest interest, second year a little bit less, third year a little bit less. But still, it's quite a big chunk of money if you have to pay 3 months of interest. So those are 2 areas that you could lose money, let alone the fact that the market may not have shifted, because obviously the market increases go in cycles as well. All right, so let's talk about defeating the 5-year rule. So there are ways to do that. Now, when you go see a mortgage broker as a first-time buyer, generally a mortgage broker will give you the top end or the top range of what you can afford. So for example, they'll say based on your income and your debt, you can afford a mortgage between $400,000 and $600,000. So you're like, yay, let's go and buy something for $600,000. No, don't buy something for $600,000. Buy something for $400,000 if your market will allow. I mean, obviously in this market here in Vancouver, there isn't a lot available in the lower price point, so you may have to go up a little bit in price. But if you can at all go in the lower range of what your mortgage broker suggests, you'll have the ability to make extra payments on your mortgage and you'll be able to tackle that principal quicker. So that way, if in the event you do sell in 3 years rather than waiting for the 5-year rule, then you might be able to come out a little bit ahead. Number 2, turn it into a rental. I mean, sometimes people buy a property, they intend to stay there for 5 years, something happens in their family and they can't. So make sure that if you're buying a condo and you think you're gonna live there, but something happens and you get a job offer elsewhere and you need to leave, that condo is going to be able to be rented. So you'll find that out in your rules and your regulations of the strata bylaws. And if it's a house, make sure that it's in a good neighborhood and that you can get, rent enough to cover at least a good chunk of your payments based on what your mortgage rate is. So here's kind of a go-to formula that's super simple to determine whether or not it is better to rent or buy. So let's say you're going to buy a property. So and then you're going to sell it. So let's pretend that you own the property already and it's a $400,000 property. So the seller always, when they're selling, pays the commission on a property. So you take the amount of the commission for both the buyer and the seller, which the seller pays for, plus the purchase price, plus any maintenance that you've done on the property, plus any interest on the mortgage that you've already paid, plus the investment gain on the down payment, because obviously you'd put a down payment and you would have earned interest on that. So you want to make sure you calculate that, plus any property taxes, plus the closing costs, as I said, which is to discharge you from title, and minus the selling price. So if you calculate all of that before you buy, you can do that calculation as well. And if the number's either going to come as a negative or a positive. So if it's lower than what you would have paid for rent, go ahead and buy, then it's worth it. But if you come out and you're going to end up spending more than you would for rent and you're only going to be in the property for 3 years, maybe you should just rent. I mean, like I said, the first 5 years of a mortgage is mostly interest. The reason they structure mortgages this way is because after the 5-year mark, you're actually starting to tackle the principal. So that's when it is really worthwhile, which is why it's the 5-year rule. So I know that circumstances happen and sometimes people's lives change and they have to sell. They didn't anticipate, they figured that they were going to stay for at least 5 years, but things happen. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to sell fast and fast, because usually when you're in trouble and you need to sell, you got to sell fast. So number 1, the one tip that I want to give you is get an appraisal. So a lot of people think that, having a realtor come out, to appraise your property is an appraisal. It's not. There is actual appraisal companies that banks use to appraise property. We do what's called a market evaluation, and that's based on market statistics only. Appraisers tend to go into more detail and they tend to be a little bit more conservative with their appraisals. So you're going to say, well, why would I want to be more conservative? Number 2 is because you want to actually price it below market value. You want to sell quick, you have to sell at an attractive price. When you go to a store and you see the rack that's, sale items $19.99, we go to that rack if we're looking for a sale. So why would we not do the same thing? If you want to sell your property fast, you have to price it effectively. So number 3, declutter. In Vancouver, we've got some pretty small condos, and chances are you're selling because you want to upgrade. The last thing you want to do is show someone how small it is. So get rid of your stuff, put it in storage, pay the extra storage fee, make it look nice and airy, spacious, no clutter. Number 4, pick an experienced agent. I know that I say this and it sounds funny because I'm an agent, but you really should pick someone that is experienced, especially if you are anxious to sell your home. Now, one thing that you may not know is when you pick an agent, a lot of people pick agents that have listings that are similar to yours. Don't do that, because it's very difficult for that agent to determine, how is he going to push people to look at your listing if he's got 5 others that are exactly the same. So pick an agent that actually is going to treat your property as the unique property that it is and spend the time and the energy on marketing it effectively. Number 5, give the agents more commission. When we're in a tough market, it is super natural to start holding back and wanting to save money. Don't do it. You know, this is your biggest asset. You want to make as much as you possibly can. And who is going to do that better for you than the people marketing it? And those people deserve to be paid, and they will be more anxious to do a better job if they are. I won't tell you that there's an average commission. It is negotiable, but you know, somewhere between 6 and 8% is kind of the average, somewhere in the mid-range there. So those are the 5 tips if you absolutely have to sell. But if you don't, try to go into any buying plan with a 5-year rule.